Imagine this. People around Indy creating new ideas, discovering new potential, developing new concepts, designing the future, and daring to dream beyond the realms of imagination. I'm your host, Ashton Wolf, and this is Indy on the Town. We're here at Morse Lake in Noblesville, Indiana, just north and east of downtown Indianapolis. And Noblesville is also the home of our next guest, Michael A. Houston. Michael is an incredible musician and producer, having produced hundreds of tracks for famous artists and brands from around the country. You may know his work from his time writing music for the Indiana Pacers, or heard his tracks playing over the speakers at your local supermarkets. But being a producer on the global scale hasn't taken any focus away from his love for the local area. He's a producer as well as a teacher, and these days he's focused on bringing up new talent from the Midwest and helping them break into the music industry. Come on, let's go talk to him right now. So Michael, tell me, how did you start making music?
You know, as I remember, my mom would send, I've got two brothers, and she would send us to Grandma's house, which was in Carbondale. I was in Chicago at the time. Grandma had this little radio. For some reason, this one song just kept coming on by a group called Chicago. And the song was If You Leave Me Now. For a long time, I just remember them playing that song over and over and over. And when the song would come on, I would go to the radio and put my ear up to the speaker. And for some reason, it's almost like I was there in the studio with them when they was making it, you know, as early as 8 years old. So I knew then what I really wanted to do.
So what was your first instrument?
Bass guitar was my first instrument. Probably around 7th grade, I met one of my early childhood friends. His name was Otis. His brother was in the military, so while he was gone, we would take the guitar and take it back over to Otis' house and just play around with it. The first song I learned how to play that Otis actually taught me was the theme from Barney Miller.
Can you hum a few bars of that bass line for me? It was a dom, do 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 dom, something like that.
Right, you got it.
Yeah, that was it right there. Yeah, that's very cool.
Play it today, I probably couldn't play it though.
Yeah,
I forgot.
So, what were some of your early motivations and your early influences, other than obviously Chicago? Were there any others?
While I was in Carbondale, another thing influenced me to start playing the piano, which is my main instrument right now. There was a young lady down there I kind of had a little childhood crush on. If I ever saw her passing the house, you know, I'd be wondering where she was going. So one day I found out she was at my friend's church. We were up in the balcony, she was playing the piano. And that kind of struck a nerve with me because I was like, I want to do that. And I actually went home and learned how to start tinkering around on the piano. She has no idea that she was probably one of the main reasons why I wanted to start playing the keyboard.
You made your first recording studio when you were in your 20s. What made you decide to make a studio instead of going into the idea of gigging with a band?
While I was at my mom's house, before the studio kind of came into play, Mom took me to the music store and she bought my first 2-track machine. I had a keyboard. Word got around that I had this little recorder, so all my friends that were musical wanted to come over and record the song. So I kind of started doing the recording studio from my mother's house in the basement. Mom got tired of me having people coming in and out of the house, you know, at all types of times in the day and at night. She told me, I'm gonna give you one of the office buildings, one of the office suites. So I want you to take the stuff out of the house, put it up there. You can do what you're doing there. So she actually gave me an office suite. It was suite number 9. I actually named the studio Suite 9 after that.
So did you record your first album at that studio?
Yes, I did. My first album, I had a gospel group at the time. You know, having the opportunity to have my own room just gave me the freedom to be able to create without being on someone's clock. You know, studio time in those days was like almost $150, $200 an hour. Me wanting to be in the production, that's kind of how the studio thing started. But I did start touring because I was able to cross paths with so many people. I ran into a couple of friends that were touring with some well-known gospel artists, Fred Hammond, Vanessa Bell Armstrong. So I actually went on tour for a while, for several years, with both of those groups. The thing that drew me back to the studio was always the music. We would be out on the road. I would be hearing the music that we're playing, but I'm thinking about how it was made. So that kind of drew me away from the road, so to speak, and back into the studio again.
So working in the recording studio, you must have worked with tons of artists. Our research shows you had a contract to pump out 4 albums a year. That's quite a heavy workload, actually. What were your most challenging projects that you worked on during that time?
One of the records I had to do in Antigua, which is a couple of 100 miles in the vicinity of Cuba. It was not really a third world island. It was kind of more a second world. You had some spots that were developed. It was only one building that had air conditioning on the entire island. It was downtown. We couldn't fly all of our gear via plane, so we kind of had to fly as much as we can, and then we had to search for whatever was on the island. Yeah, that process was pretty scary. We were hot rodding and piecemeal and everything we could to try to get a recording rig together. So it almost became a community effort for us to put all the recording equipment together, but it ended up being, went well. Those kind of things, it was kind of hairy, but we got through it.
That sounds like a challenging time, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
What would you say is your greatest musical accomplishment?
Probably the year I got a Dove Award nomination, which is the highest award for Christian music. Being around all these legends that I grew up watching and listening to, just sitting right next to them and just mind blown.
Obviously, you've done a great deal over the course of your life, and you're constantly meeting new talent. Is that part of what inspired you to become a teacher at Columbia College in Chicago?
Yes, it did. One of the things that I observed through working in the business was that a lot of new artists just did not understand how the business really works. Bad perceptions and ideas and concepts of how to really make it in the business. I just kind of wanted to share some of my experiences, as much as possible to help them go down the right path instead of the wrong one.
So now moving on to your future plans, you're working on an artist development company, is that correct? Tell me a little bit about that.
The day we live in now, everything is social media and technologically based. So what I learned over the years in terms of how an artist is really developed and how they build their careers, I wanted to take that knowledge and apply it to the technology that we have access to today. Kind of melt both worlds together, so to speak. The concepts are often the same in terms of what it takes to break or build an artist or develop an artist, but the tools we use are different.
Is there any advice that you would give an up-and-coming artist looking to get into the music industry?
I would. I think the people part of it we kind of miss out on now because of everything is just done behind the glass, behind the computer screen. When it comes to working with other people and just building relationships, that part still exists and it does matter. At some point, you're going to have to get in the room with these people that that discovered you. And if you don't know how to interact on the level that you should, it could cut you out of an opportunity. So the people skill, the work ethic, the professionalism, being likable, all those kind of things really, really matter.
So tell me how people can get in touch with you regarding your artist development company.
Please visit my website, www.mhmusic.com. And from there, you can find all of my links to iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, so on and so forth.
Can you imagine such incredible talent and right here in Noblesville, Indiana? And at Indy on the Town, we can't wait to discover even more talent from around Indiana. Stick around.